really not a lot of good to talk about there as well. This was a women's basketball team that started SEC play 6-0 and looked to be a part of that upper crust. Ever since then, they've been 2-8, lost 6 straight games. What do you attribute what this is to? Because I'm trying to put my finger on some of it, and none of it really makes sense. Or is it a situation? Let me give you an example, Sam. That way, I can filibuster. That way, you can think about it for a second. There was a day. This reminds me of a day I was, before I got into this business, I was doing marketing, and we're doing marketing for these door to door. And one day I had a great day. I had literally a great day, great sales. The next day, I locked my keys in my car, not once, but twice. The same officer had to get it out twice. I was drinking coffee at the time. I don't drink coffee now. Spilled my coffee all over me. Had to go back home, change suits. It was a disastrous day. But then the next day was a good day. So I wonder if this women's basketball team just had a day, is just having a period like that, or is this sign of more bad things to come for this program? Do you attribute it to as a one-off? I know it's 6 games, but a one-off period, or something bigger?
Yeah, in reference to your bad day, a sports bettor might just call that being due. You know, they haven't been going their way. They might be due for it. But no, I do think that there's a lot of people around here that are scratching their heads going, what's going on? And that's something that here in the media, we've been asking Coach Caldwell for the last couple of weeks, what's going on? And, you know, it's been a rough stretch, not just in the terms of losses, but being on the road, returning home, not having very many days where you have back-to-back practices at home. Last week, they finally had 2 days in a row of back-to-back practice at home. We asked her, what's going on? What do we need to work on? And her answer was, well, we need to stop. We need to be better in our transition defense. We need to stop turning the ball over. These are 2 things that are key to us. So there's things that are tangible that, in X's and O's that she can say, this is where we're struggling. But when you watch them, a lot of it is, 1, the defense is really bad. And 2, the energy just seems to struggle at times, to where you're watching and you're going, okay, for a little bit, this team looks like they're as good as anybody in the Southeastern Conference. And they go on a stretch where you're like, man, they might be most talented teams in the country. Like, don't let them get hot. And then, it's a quick burning fire. It's a fire that fizzles out pretty quickly. And then all of a sudden they give up, a 14-0 run on defense, where it's just horrible defense. We're allowing backdoor layups that, just looks like a complete defensive breakdown. So maybe in the sense of, hey, they've lost 6 in a row, they're due. This tournament's going to be good for them. Now's the time to get in on them while the stock is low. But no, you never want to be stumbling into the month of March, and that's exactly what's happening right now. They are going to have a 6 seed, so they still have a first round bye in this tournament, even with how poorly they played at the end of the year. They're stumbling into it, still have a first round bye. Still, realistically, if you look at the bracket as a whole, kind of have a more favorable route than you would see for a lot of other teams, where you got to get through Texas, who's probably their most challenging one, and then Vandy, if you can get that far, of course. But it's still a favorable route, so you don't want to count them out entirely. But as you mentioned, there's been a lot of those spilled coffee days for the Lady Vols this season.
6-game losing streak, as we've mentioned, and just taking all of this in. Andrea Carter kind of publicly bashing the program and where it's at right now. You never want to see that for one of the people that ended up making the program into what it is now. And just the level of anxiety that I personally have seen around the fan base. I feel like they're not used to this. This is uncharted territory. Is Kim Caldwell safe going into next year?
I think she's safe going into next season, barring absolute disaster this upcoming week in the SEC tournament. And by that, there's certain games that you have to win, and there was one that their last win this season was against Missouri. And it was at home, and you have the former Lady Vol coach coming in, and it's a reunion on Rocky Top, and the Lady Vols win by 40. And you go, man, that is taking care of business. You did what you needed to do. There was no, surprising storylines of, man, the Lady Vols upset by their former coach. We took care of business. I think barring that happening in the tournament, barring that exact scenario, I think she's safe heading into next season. They're going to make the NCAA tournament. They're going to get in. They're probably just as a, 7 seed, depending on who they get in the first round. If it's a 7-10 matchup, you think they win at least one game in the tournament. She took them to the Sweet 16 in her first year last year. So despite the records, despite the collapses, despite the stretches of bad basketball, you go, okay, it's not, of course, nobody is that Pat Summit level of basketball here on Rocky Top and playing for the Lady Vols. But, if she can somehow do a Sweet 16 in her first season and a Sweet 16 or at least a round of 32 this year, you're like, okay, it's not the worst thing in the world. We're still building off of it. We're still bringing in recruits. She had a phenomenal freshman class this year where, Mia Paldo just was named to the SEC freshman team today. Next season, they've got the number 2 player in the country that's coming in here. And, so you still have a lot of positive to look forward to with this team. Now, if they lose in the second round of the SEC tournament and they lose in the first round of the national tournament, things change quickly. Yeah. And then from there, I think you enter next season on one of the hottest seats in the country because you're representing the program that is, a top 3 women's basketball program in the country as far as history goes. So I think she makes it through this season, and then barring, a run to the Elite 8 or Final 4 this year, I think she's definitely on the hot seat going into next year.
For sure. And they say, basketball locker rooms will be the final thing before we move on to softball. And this might be just a yes or no answer. They say that basketball locker rooms are really intricate places. Even in the NBA, WNBA, college basketball, there are very long seasons. You start in the summer, you end in, March, April if you're lucky. Typically, every now and again, there might be a skirmish that we hear about later in a book that happens to pop up. As far as you guys know, there is nothing internally that's up with this team, right? Is it more just execution on the court? Because it seems like, they scored 93 points in a game against Oklahoma. It feels like on the court it's just not an execution thing. Have you heard any rumblings about anything going on in-house?
I'd be a complete PR agent lying to you if I told you that, everything appears to be squeaky clean on the inside, because within the last hour, we've seen one of their seniors, Kaya Wen, who people were grumbling in their last game, she didn't play in their senior day when they were down by so many points. Why didn't she play? And then she takes to Twitter and is grumbling. And within the last hour, we get, reports that she's stepping away from the team heading into the SEC tournament. So she's not playing. She hasn't been an intricate part of this team. She tore her Achilles last year, so she's a senior who wasn't getting a lot of playing time to begin with. But just seeing headlines like that where, okay, a senior is stepping away before postseason basketball, you're just like, if you told me that everything is perfect and peaches and rainbows on the inside, I'm like, I'm not seeing it firsthand. I can attest to it. I'm not in the locker room.
For sure.
I'm not hearing. No players are coming up and talking to Sam Granville and saying, "Hey, this is what's going on in the locker room." But it appears that it is not the most wonderful situation in the world right now. Hopefully, they can turn that around. Hopefully, they can gear everybody up for the postseason and say, "This is the type of basketball we want to play. We need all this buy-in. Let's go on a run, forget what's happened, like we're 0-0 in the postseason," all those great speeches that can be had. Hopefully that's what we see. But from the outside looking in on something where we don't have a very clear picture, it does not look to be the most wonderful picture from what we can see out here.